So let's say I'm a client of yours and I have a customer service agent and I'm going into the Coval platform for the first time, blank slate. What do I do? Where do I go to start to make my life easier and start to have comprehensive testing and simulations going? Like, yeah, what's the flow like as a user?
I'll talk through the whole developer lifecycle. So it's day one. You're building a voice agent. You go and you find a pretty easy to use platform to build a voice agent, and you build an MVP. Then you can come into our platform and you can iterate on your prompt directly, so that you can say, how does the prompt play out in just a super basic environment? Not even enabling voice necessarily. Just can I see how the conversation plays out with this single prompt? That's usually this first stage. And then you might make your agent a bit more complicated. You might add in some reg, or you add multiple agents, or you add some flows to it. And then what you can do is set up some simulated tests through our system. You'll create a test set. That test set might have a bunch of different scenarios, like book an appointment for next week, call to issue a refund, complain about the recent experience you had on their airline, etc. And you'll run all of these scenarios through our simulator. Then you'll have a bunch of simulated conversations. That alone is super helpful, because now you can look through lots of different, you can run 100 simulated conversations at once and then digest the ones that maybe failed to complete or had a flag, a failed metric. Maybe it shows that the conversation was ended abruptly, or the user wasn't able to achieve their goal, or the appointment was not successfully booked. So then you can go in and manually review those and try and understand what's happening. And here's where our users really iterate on their both their evals and their system. So you might go in and realize, these are the things that I'm trying to manually detect. I'll create a metric in order to detect those things. And then I realize that I'm interrupting the user, so I'll change some parameters so that I'm not interrupting the user as eagerly. Then I'll rerun it through simulation and be able to say, okay, is it now clear that my interruptions have decreased? So once you have a good workflow there, you can automate those and then start monitoring how well your system's doing in production.
Nice. I might be interrupting you, or you might have gotten through developer lifecycle, but I have a couple questions for you. So you mentioned at the beginning on day one, the developer selects an agent. Can you disclose preferences that you might have or Covel might have as kind of preferred agent providers? Is that something that you do or you can provide guidance on in public?
Yeah, so I think there really is not necessarily a right platform or a one size fits all. And I'm saying that honestly because we've seen this work. We've seen all sorts of different platforms work well. We also want to be the evaluation framework that's agnostic of which framework you're using, because this allows you to really easily switch between platforms, like as the everything is moving so fast in voice AI. And also, you, as prices go up or as your requirements change or as your product evolves, different solutions might make sense for you at different times. So I don't think that we're kind of biased towards one or the other. I think there's a bunch that make sense for different use cases. And there's a couple of axes in which I would make that decision. So, for example, on the scale of low code to more configurable, you have much more low code solutions that are servicing business owners or any non engineering background, where they can really set up a voice agent as easy as setting up, an email newsletter or any other um, easy to configure, um, system. But here you're going to have a lot less configurability. Setting up function calling or reg is going to be a lot more limited. Whereas a higher configurability option, such as like some of the open source voice orchestrators, those are going to give you a lot more control over function calling, over being able to add in different infrastructure, and your kind of mix and match that with your own in-house built infrastructure. And so I think figuring out where on that spectrum you are, then also looking at which companies kind of support the developer needs that you're looking for. Some other considerations that we've seen are function. So there's a couple of important things when you're building voice agents, such as instruction following, function calling, workflow following, like conversational or how natural the voice sounds, creativity. So if you're building a application that's talking to you as a friend versus you're building an application that has to follow a very strict workflow in order to collect a certain amount of data for like a patient intake versus a voice application that is calling out to do a bunch of function calls, like such as updating records or booking appointments, or you're in a very like high compliance industry where instruction following is really important, like it really needs to do the things that you tell it to. These are all different trade-offs, and I think different platforms excel at different things. So for example, like the conversational and creativity, you might be looking at like different models than, for example, if you really care about function calling, and making sure that you can do really complex function calls, that might not fit into the more opinionated platforms, that require you to set everything up in the way that they determine. That being said, there's some platforms that allow you to set up workflows in these really beautiful ways and makes it really easy so you don't have to code this giant mess. So those are kind of the trade-offs that we make, and we actually work with our customers to figure out what the right platform is for them. So if you're having these questions, reach out to me and I'm happy to even just like bat around some ideas.